My boss fired me on my first day back from cancer treatment. The shareholders just received an anonymous 50-page report. My name is Eliana Cross and I am 52 years old. The first thing I noticed was the silence. No welcome back banner. No smiles. Just the sharp beep of my key card turning red. I stood there in the lobby, fingers shaking, my hair barely an inch long after months of chemo, when Sterling stepped forward holding a cardboard box with my name written in black marker. He didn't hug me. Eliana, he said, voice flat, rehearsed. The company moved on. I laughed once, because it sounded impossible. I had beaten cancer. I had come back. That was supposed to mean something. You're a liability now, he continued, eyes sliding past me like I was already erased. We need healthy energy. Healthy. The word sliced deeper than the surgery ever had. Employees walked past pretending not to see me. I held the box, my life inside it, and felt something break clean in my chest. If you want to know how a man who sent flowers every week became this cruel, subscribe for more revenge stories, because this was only the beginning. I sat in my car for almost an hour, hands locked around the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing left. My phone buzzed. One notification. Then another. $12,417.89, payment due. My stomach dropped. When Sterling fired me, my insurance vanished. Not next month. Not next week. Retroactively. Every scan. Every drip. Every night I slept under hospital lights was suddenly my problem. I scrolled, numb, until another charge caught my eye. A familiar vendor. The florist. The Get Well flowers. Purchased weekly. On the company card. Filed under my employee expense account. He hadn't been kind. He had been careful. My hands started to shake. Those flowers weren't love or concern. They were paperwork. Evidence. A trail he thought no one would follow. I leaned my forehead against the wheel and laughed softly, because if I didn't laugh, I would scream. That was the moment I understood something important. He hadn't just fired me. He had planned for me not to survive. A year earlier, I would have defended Sterling with my life. We worked late nights together, long after the building emptied. He called me the backbone of the company. Said my mind kept everything standing. One night, praise turned into touch. Touch turned into secrets whispered in the dark office. He told me I was the soul of the place. I was 52. He made me feel seen again. When I told him about the diagnosis, his face softened. He held my hands and promised, I'll take care of you, Eliana. Always. He said it right before chemo started. He visited once. After that, the flowers came instead. Cards signed with his neat handwriting. Rest. Heal. We need you. I believed him. I worked from hospital beds. Sent reports between treatments. I thought loyalty mattered. Remembering his voice now made my skin crawl. Because men who promise forever right before you get sick aren't saviors. They're investors. And I had been worth more to him broken than healed. I went back that night. Not through the front doors. Through the service elevator I memorized as an intern decades ago. The code still worked. Of course it did. Sterling never updated anything unless it benefited him. My desk was gone. In its place sat a young woman with my old chair, my old screen, my old job. She laughed on the phone, carefree, untouched by sickness or truth. I waited until the floor emptied. Then I crouched and reached under the desk, fingers brushing dust and tape. There it was. My emergency recovery USB drive. I had hidden it years ago, after watching another woman get quietly pushed out. Just in case, I'd told myself. I slipped it into my pocket, heart pounding. As I left, I glanced once more at the girl who replaced me. She looked exactly like I used to. And suddenly, I knew this wasn't over. It was just starting. At home, I plugged in the drive with hands steadier than I felt. Folders bloomed across the screen. Contracts. Emails. Audio files. Timelines. Things I'd collected without admitting why. It wasn't just backup work. It was a record. I opened a blank document and typed the title slowly, deliberately. Page 1. The Sterling Fraud, How Life Insurance Became a Corporate Slush Fund. Names followed. Dates. Dollar amounts. I saw patterns I hadn't wanted to see before. Policies taken out on employees. Claims filed quietly. Money rerouted through shell companies. People like me. Sick. Older. Expensive. I leaned back, exhaustion washing over me, but underneath it burned something stronger. Purpose. I wasn't writing this for revenge yet. I was writing it for the truth. And once the truth is written down, it doesn't stay quiet for long. The next morning, I followed my replacement. I didn't plan to. My body just moved before my fear could stop it. Chloe left the building laughing, young and bright, swinging her bag like the world was still fair. I watched from across the street, an older woman with tired eyes and too much truth. She met Sterling at a bar near the office. The same one he used to take me to after late meetings. I sat 2 tables away, unnoticed. He touched her wrist when he spoke, leaned in close, smiled the same smile he once used on me. It was identical. That's when it clicked. He didn't just replace my job. He replaced my role. Vulnerable women. Smart enough to do the work. Grateful enough not to ask questions. Easy to discard. Chloe laughed at something he whispered, and my chest tightened. Not with jealousy. With clarity. I wasn't special. I was a pattern. And patterns can be proven. The insurance files took me 3 days to fully understand. While I was sick, Sterling had filed a critical illness claim in my name. I remembered signing papers through chemo fog, trusting him to handle details. The payout was $250,000. I never saw a dollar. The money went to a shell company with a clean name and dirty books. I traced it slowly, carefully, like following blood drops across snow. The owner was Sterling. My cancer had funded his life. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. I thought of the nights I vomited into hospital sinks. The mornings I forced myself to answer emails so I wouldn't be forgotten. He hadn't forgotten. He had monetized me. I added screenshots, bank trails, signatures to the report. Page numbers climbed. This wasn't just cruelty. It was theft dressed up as leadership. And I was no longer afraid of what would happen when the truth came out. I was afraid of what would happen if it didn't. My body gave out before my anger did. I collapsed in the grocery store, right between the bread and the milk. Someone called an ambulance. The ride felt endless. At the ER, they treated me quickly, but not kindly. No insurance meant clipped voices and careful words. Necessary care only. A nurse adjusted my fore and leaned in close. "You worked at Sterling Systems, right?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "You're the 3rd woman this year," she said. "Same story. Fired after getting sick." The room spun. 3rd. I wasn't unlucky. I was part of a system. Later, alone behind the curtain, I cried. Not from pain, but from fury so deep it felt volcanic. He had done this before. He would do it again. Unless someone stopped him. I pulled out my phone and added a new section to the report. Victims. Patterns. Testimonies. My hands shook, but my mind was clear. Survival wasn't enough anymore. Justice had work to do. Finding the other women took weeks. One had moved states, barely holding herself together. The other, Naomi, was fire-wrapped in scars. She had been fired after maternity leave, labeled too expensive. We met in a quiet diner. She slid her phone across the table. "I recorded him," she said. I knew no one would believe me. The audio played. Sterling's voice was calm. Cold. "Sick employees are like broken equipment," he said. "You scrap them for parts." I closed my eyes. Naomi had offshore account numbers. Names. Dates. Proof I'd been missing. Together, we filled the gaps. The report hit 40 pages. This wasn't revenge yet. This was documentation. And documentation is deadly when it's honest. We hugged before leaving. 3 women tied together by betrayal. He thought we disappeared quietly. Instead, we were assembling something he couldn't outrun. A record of his sins. And records don't forget. I texted him from a burner phone. "Miss you," I wrote. Simple. Weak. Familiar. He replied within minutes. We met at the old hotel. The one where he used to tell me I was irreplaceable. He smiled when he saw me, relief flooding his face. "You look good," he said, scanning for damage. He touched my arm. Tested the boundary. I let him. The recorder in my purse caught everything. He talked too much. About stress. About mistakes. About how things got messy. He never apologized. When he tried to kiss me, I leaned back. "Would you do it again?" I asked. He paused. Then smiled. "Business is business." That was enough. I left first, heart pounding, evidence secured. Outside, the night air felt sharp and clean. He thought he still had control. He didn't know I had his voice. And soon, everyone else would too. I went to HR because part of me still believed rules mattered. The director smiled too widely as I spoke. He nodded at the right places. When I finished, he leaned back and laughed. Eliana, he said, you're emotional. You've been through a lot. Then he added, gently, Sterling is family. Brother-in-law. The room tilted. Of course he was. Every door I thought existed was painted on. I left without arguing. Without crying. Because something inside me finally accepted the truth. I couldn't fix this from the inside. This wasn't a broken room. It was a burning house. And the only way out was through the walls. That night, I wrote a new line at the top of the report. This will not go to HR. I slept better than I had in weeks. Because once you stop asking permission from people who profit from your silence, fear loses its grip. I wasn't going to knock anymore. I was going to expose everything. The shareholder list was locked tight. Private emails. Personal numbers. Layers of protection meant to keep people like me out. There was only one person who could help. Sterling's ex-wife. She met me in a bookstore cafe, eyes sharp, posture stiff with old wounds. I told her everything. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she slid a leather-bound address book across the table. I kept it, she said. Because men like him repeat themselves. Her voice shook. He ruined me quietly. Don't let him ruin you the same way. Inside were names. Direct contacts. People who actually owned the company Sterling treated like a toy. Give him hell, she added. I promised I would. That night, I prepared the email list. 500 recipients. Investors. Board members. Media. The report was ready. All 49 pages. I saved the draft and stared at the send button. Once pressed, there was no undo. I slept with the laptop open, light glowing like a countdown. Tomorrow, the truth would walk into a room full of power. The gala glittered like a lie. Crystal glasses. Silk dresses. Sterling stood center stage, smiling like a hero. The company's 25th anniversary. His triumph. I stood outside in the rain. Older. Thinner. Balding hair hidden under a scarf. Invisible. My finger hovered over send. If you're still reading, subscribe for more revenge stories, because what happened next changed everything. I clicked. Phones buzzed across the ballroom like insects waking up. Faces dropped. Whispers spread. A woman gasped. Behind Sterling, the projector flickered. Page 7 appeared. Embezzlement logs. Dollar amounts. Dates. His name. He froze mid-speech. I smiled for the first time in months. Justice didn't knock. It arrived uninvited and loud. And this was only the opening strike. Panic has a sound. I heard it ripple through the room even from outside. Chairs scraped. Glasses shattered. Sterling turned, eyes wide, as the screen scrolled on its own. Page 12. Insurance fraud. Page 18. Shell companies. He tried to laugh it off. Called it a hack. A smear. His voice cracked. Security moved. Board members argued. Shareholders stared at their phones, reading faster than he could deny. I watched through the glass as the man who called me a liability unraveled. He fled the stage. I stepped inside just as he burst through the side doors, breathing hard, eyes wild. I can explain, he said when he saw me. I held up his car keys. No, I replied. You can listen. For the first time, he looked small. The truth followed him everywhere now. There was nowhere left to hide. And I wasn't finished. We sat in the back of his car, rain pounding the windows. I'll give you $1 million, he whispered. You retract the report. Say it was fake. He reached for me like he always had. I shoved the door open while the car was still moving. He fell hard into a puddle, suit ruined, mask gone. I'm the liability, I said calmly. Remember? I drove away. Behind me, sirens wailed. Ahead of me, something like peace waited. The investigation began that night. Accounts froze. Offices locked. Lawyers scrambled. And somewhere deep inside, I felt something shift. Not relief. Readiness. Because the first blow was done. The real reckoning was still coming. And it would be thorough. Sterling didn't disappear quietly. By morning, the news called it an internal review. By afternoon, the SEC called it something else. His accounts froze. His badge stopped working. His face filled screens with words like alleged and investigation stamped across it.
I got the call that night.
Eliana, we need you to testify, a calm voice said. You're our primary witness. I agreed without hesitation. Then I opened my laptop and stared at the report. Page 50. I hadn't sent it. That page held proof the board knew.
Approved payouts. Signed off on firings.
Sterling wasn't alone.
He was protected.
I closed the file. Because power doesn't panic all at once. It negotiates first. An hour later, an unknown number called.
We can make this go away, Amun said. A board seat.
Lifetime security. I smiled into the dark. They still thought this was about money. They had no idea how angry I really was. The hospital called the next morning. Payment overdue.
Again.
I laughed softly and hung up. The irony burned. Sterling sat under house arrest while my debt kept growing like a shadow. Then Chloe showed up at my door. She looked nothing like the girl from the office.
Pale. Shaking. Terrified.
He was planning something, she whispered. He said you knew too much.
She handed me a flash drive. Emails.
Messages.
Plans.
Not just firing me. Erasing me. My hands went cold. This wasn't corporate cruelty. This was something darker. I hugged Chloe and locked the door behind her.
That night, I backed up everything.
Sent copies to places Sterling couldn't reach. The report wasn't just leverage anymore. It was protection. And suddenly, the board's offer made sense. They weren't trying to save the company. They were trying to survive what page 50 would do to them.
So was I.
Sterling broke house arrest 3 days later. I knew before the police did. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. He's coming, Naomi texted. I locked the doors and started a live stream. When he appeared, he looked unhinged. Flowers in one hand. A gun in the other. The same get-well bouquet. I loved you, he said, voice cracking. I kept him talking. About stress. About pressure. About money. About the insurance. He confessed everything. On camera. Sirens came fast. When they took him away, he didn't look at me. I sat on the floor shaking, alive. Later, the court recovered the money. My bills disappeared. Then the judge awarded me the full $250,000 as damages. Sterling watched from a cell. Healthy energy, at last. The shareholders voted within a week. Every executive gone. They called me in. Eliana, they said, we need a new face. An ethical one. They offered me interim CEO. I accepted. Walking back into that building felt unreal. My keycard flashed green. Employees stood. Applauded. In Sterling's old office, my framed report hung on the wall. All 50 pages. I stared at it quietly. This wasn't victory. This was responsibility. Because revenge without reform is just another cycle. And I had something bigger planned. Something that would make sure no one ever got treated like broken equipment again. The cleansing was about to begin. I hired forensic auditors first. They found everything. Sterling wasn't the mastermind. He was a puppet. The trail led straight to the chairman. The man who offered me silence for power. He invited me to his yacht. I went wired. He talked freely. Too freely. About strategy. About sacrifice. Sterling was a mistake, he said. You and I could be a dynasty. The signal cut. I jumped overboard with his laptop. The Coast Guard picked me up. Inside the files was the list. Every sick. Every pregnant. Every old employee fired quietly. 200 names. 200 lives. The reckoning had arrived. And this time it wasn't personal. It was nuclear. The police questioned me for hours after the yacht incident. I told them everything.
Slowly. Clearly.
I handed over the laptop, the recordings, the files, marked the list. Agents exchanged looks that told me I had opened something much bigger than one man. When I got home, my body finally crashed. I slept for 12 hours straight. When I woke up, the world had changed again. Sterling had formally confessed. On record. The chairman was cooperating, which I learned was a polite way of saying lying carefully. The media camped outside my building, calling me brave, calling me bitter, calling me dangerous. They weren't wrong about the last part. The prosecutors asked me what I wanted. I surprised them. I want it fixed, I said. Not covered. Not settled. Fixed. They nodded slowly, like people realizing the storm wasn't passing. It was just beginning to make landfall. And I was standing right at the center of it. The court ruling came quietly. No cameras. No speeches. The stolen illness payout was recovered. Every cent. My medical debt vanished in one clean motion, like erasing chalk from a board. Then the judge looked directly at me. Damages, he said. $250,000. I didn't cry. Money wasn't what I wanted, but money meant safety. Freedom. The ability to breathe without fear. Sterling watched through a screen from jail. He looked smaller than I remembered. Hollowed out. For the first time, I saw fear on his face. I walked outside afterward and stood in the sun. Just stood there. Alive. Standing. Still here. The reporters shouted questions. I didn't answer. Because this wasn't the end. It was the pause before something much larger moved into place. Justice had opened the door. Now it was my turn to decide how far to push it. The boardroom felt different without him. Empty chairs. Avoided eye contact. People who once laughed at my complaints now cleared their throats when I spoke. The vote was fast. Every executive removed. Then they turned to me. We need leadership, the largest shareholder said. Someone people trust. Interim CEO. The words landed heavy. I accepted, knowing exactly what it would cost. When I walked through the lobby afterward, employees stood and clapped. Some cried. Some just nodded, like they finally felt safe breathing. In Sterling's old office, the framed report stared back at me. 50 pages. The truth, printed and undeniable. I touched the glass lightly. I wasn't here to sit in his chair. I was here to burn it down and rebuild something that couldn't rot from the inside. Because survival isn't revenge. Change is. And I was just getting started. My first official day back felt unreal. Same building. Different power. My keycard flashed green. The sound was small, but it echoed inside me. For the first time since my diagnosis, I felt like I belonged somewhere again. I held an all-hands meeting. No speeches. No slogans. Just truth. I was fired because I got sick, I said. That ends today. The room was silent. Then applause rose, slow and strong. Afterward, I sat alone in my office and opened a new file. Phase 1 cleansing. I hired forensic auditors with no ties to the company. No favors. No blind spots. If rot existed, I wanted it exposed. Because revenge wasn't about hurting one man. It was about removing the system that made men like him possible. And tomorrow, the digging would begin. Deep. Uncomfortable. Necessary. The first audit report landed on my desk at 6:12 a.m. By noon, I knew Sterling had never been in charge. He followed orders. Payments approved above him. Firings requested from higher up. Patterns too clean to be accidental. The real architect was still sitting comfortably in the shadows. I didn't confront anyone. I smiled. Signed papers. Scheduled meetings. Then I expanded the audits. Every manager. Every department. 10 years back. Panic spread quietly. That was when I felt it. The shift. This was no longer defense. This was revenge with purpose. Systematic. Cold. Earned. I leaned back in my chair, hands steady, heart calm. They fired me because they thought I was weak. Because I was sick. Because I wouldn't fight. They were wrong. This was where justice stopped being polite and started being exact. The audits pointed to one name again and again. The chairman. Every questionable approval. Every cost optimization. Every silent dismissal tied back to him. Sterling had been loud and cruel. The chairman was quiet and precise. I read the files late into the night, older eyes burning, fingers stiff with anger. He had approved my firing. Signed it while I was still in treatment. I was working for the man who tried to erase me. He invited me to dinner the next day. Said it was strategic bonding. I accepted. Because predators always believe they are safest when they feel admired. I wore calm like armor. Listened. Asked gentle questions. Let him talk.
And he did.
Men like him always do. By the time dessert arrived, I knew exactly how I would take him down.
Not fast. Not loud.
But in a way he could never undo. The real war was finally visible. And I was already 3 moves ahead. The yacht invitation came wrapped in flattery.
Clear your head, the chairman said.
You've earned it. I wore a wire hidden inside a necklace.
Simple. Elegant. Deadly.
The ocean stretched endless and blue. Power always loves open water. He poured wine and spoke like a king. About legacy. About sacrifice. About how companies survive by cutting weak links.
You understand, he said.
You lived through it.
I nodded. Inside, my blood burned.
He admitted he knew about the insurance scam. Said it was efficient. The signal crackled.
Then died.
I smiled even as fear crept in. Out there, it was just me and a man who didn't believe consequences applied to him. That was when I moved. I triggered the emergency flare and jumped.
Cold water swallowed me.
But I surfaced holding his encrypted laptop. And my freedom. The Coast Guard pulled me aboard minutes later. The chairman screamed from his deck, powerless, exposed. The wire cut, but the laptop was enough. I spent the night wrapped in blankets, unlocking files with help from federal agents. What we found made the room go silent. The list. Hundreds of names.
Sick. Pregnant. Old.
Fired quietly.
Replaced cheaply.
I stared at the screen until dawn broke. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about everyone. By morning, we had the framework for a class action lawsuit so large it would crush him personally. I called Naomi. Then the others. 200 former employees answered. They weren't scared. They were ready. The chairman tried to flee that night. He didn't get far. Justice was waiting at the gate. The media called it the survival revolution.
200 of us stood outside headquarters. Some cried. Some shouted.
Some just held signs with names no one remembered anymore. I stood in front.
Older. Scarred. Alive.
Cameras flashed as lawyers filed papers that would tear the chairman's fortune apart piece by piece. He was arrested at the airport, passport in hand. I met him there. Handed him a small card.
Get well soon, it read.
He couldn't look at me as they cuffed him. For the first time, power didn't protect him. It abandoned him. Behind me, survivors cheered. Strangers hugged. This was the reckoning.
Not revenge.
Restoration. And it was only going to grow. Because once people see the truth, they don't go back to sleep.
And I was wide awake.
The company didn't survive as it was.
It was reborn.
We renamed it Vitality Systems. Employee-first healthcare. Transparent leadership.
Shared ownership. The stock soared.
Turns out loyalty is profitable. Sterling was sentenced to 20 years. He wrote me letters from prison. Begged forgiveness. I mailed him a thick envelope. 50 pages. A report on prison rehabilitation programs. I never read his reply. My scan came back clean that week. 1 year cancer-free. I burned my old medical bills in a bonfire by the beach. The flames felt like closure. I wasn't the woman he fired anymore. I was something far more dangerous. A survivor with proof. And I wasn't finished auditing the world yet. The class action moved faster than anyone expected. 200 names became a single force.
Stories lined up like dominoes. Sick days punished.
Pregnancies labeled disruptions. Aging workers quietly erased. I testified for hours.
Not as a victim. As a witness.
The chairman's lawyers tried to paint me as bitter. Emotional.
Old and angry.
I smiled and showed spreadsheets. Patterns don't lie. When the judge approved the case, the room erupted. People cried openly. Hands grabbed mine. I felt something I hadn't felt in years.
Belonging.
The media followed us everywhere.
They call me the face of it.
I corrected them every time. I'm just one name, I said. There are hundreds more. That night, alone, I finally allowed myself to shake. Justice is heavy when you carry it for others.
But I didn't put it down.
I had come too far to stop now. The chairman tried to bargain.
He offered settlements. Donations.
Public apologies written by professionals. No one listened. When the verdict came down, it stripped him of everything. Assets seized.
Accounts frozen.
His power evaporated in real time. I watched from the back of the courtroom. He looked smaller than Sterling ever had. Desperate men always do. As they led him away, our eyes met. No words passed between us. There was nothing left to say. Outside, reporters asked if I felt satisfied. I thought of the women who never came back from sickness. The ones who lost homes, families, hope. This isn't satisfaction, I said. This is correction. Later, I walked alone by the river, breathing cool air into lungs once poisoned by chemo. The world felt wider, lighter. Justice doesn't heal everything, but it makes room for healing to begin. Vitality Systems launched quietly. No flashy ads. No lies. Healthcare coverage from day one. No penalties for illness. Transparent pay. Worker voices mattered. The market loved it. Stock prices rose because trust is a rare currency. Employees stopped whispering. Smiles became real. Fear left the halls. I walked the floors often. Listened more than I spoke. This wasn't my company. It was ours. The press asked if I would stay CEO permanently. I didn't answer right away. Power is tempting. I knew that now. But I also knew what it did to people who forgot why they had it. At home, I looked at my reflection. Older. Scarred. Strong. Survival had changed me. Now, I had to choose what to do with that change. Sterling's letter arrived on plain paper. He wrote about regret. About loneliness. About faith. He asked for forgiveness. I read it once. Then I mailed him something back. 50 pages. A report on prison rehabilitation programs. No note. No signature. Some lessons don't need explanation. My next scan came back clear. 1 year cancer-free. I stood on the beach that night and burned my old medical bills. The flames crackled like they were happy to go. For the first time, my future didn't feel borrowed. It felt earned. I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished with anger. What remained was choice. And I was ready to make the final one. Chloe became head of HR. She redesigned everything. Protection policies. Whistleblower systems. Support without punishment. One day, she knocked on my door, nervous. I found something, she said. In the new board's books. I closed my eyes. Even clean systems attract rot. That night, I sat alone, thinking. I could stay CEO. Keep fighting forever. Or I could end the game entirely. Power had nearly killed me once. I wouldn't let it rot me too. By morning, I knew. The final act wasn't more control. It was letting go. The biggest revenge isn't winning the throne. It's making sure no one ever needs one again. The board meeting was quiet when I told them my decision. I'm stepping down, I said calmly. Shock moved through the room. Panic followed. You can't, someone said. You're the reason this works. I nodded. That's exactly why I can. I laid out the plan. Convert the company into a worker-owned cooperative. Shared votes. Shared profits. No single throne left to rot. Some protested. Others listened. By the end, the vote passed. Power dissolved into structure. When I left the building that night, I felt lighter than I had in years. No crown. No target. Just freedom. I wasn't the boss anymore. I was a partner. And for the first time since my diagnosis, my future didn't depend on anyone's permission. It depended on my peace. That felt like the final victory. Life got quiet. Not empty. Just still. I moved to a small place near the water. No assistants. No meetings. Just mornings with sunlight and coffee. Sometimes reporters called. I didn't answer. The company thrived without me. That mattered more than praise. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Assets seized from Sterling and former chairman to fund national cancer research. I sat down slowly. Read it again. They didn't just fall. They were transformed into something useful. Something good. I closed my eyes and let the wind move through my thinning hair. Revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it heals people you'll never meet. And that's louder than any applause. I met Naomi and Chloe once a month. We talked about life now. Not court dates. Not trauma. Life. Laughter came easier. One day, Chloe said, "You know, they'll teach this someday." I smiled. I hope they teach it wrong. I didn't want a legend. I wanted a warning. Don't exploit the sick. Don't mistake silence for weakness. Don't assume women disappear when you erase their jobs. We don't.
We adapt. We document. We survive. And sometimes, we burn systems down politely. That night, I slept deeply. No nightmares.
No unfinished business.
Just rest.
The kind earned after a long war finally ends. I walked the beach at sunrise. The water was cold.
Honest.
I thought about who I had been before cancer. Before betrayal. She was quieter.
Smaller.
I didn't want to go back to her. I wanted to carry her forward.
Stronger.
I left my shoes in the sand and stepped into the waves. For a moment, I felt weightless.
Alive.
No reports to write. No monsters to hunt. Just breath and horizon. That was enough. I turned back toward home, ready to live instead of fight. Ready to be more than what tried to kill me. They fired me because they thought I was dying. They thought sickness made me weak. Disposable. They were wrong. When you have nothing left to lose, fear stops working.
Silence breaks. Truth sharpens.
I didn't win by shouting. I won by documenting.
By surviving.
By refusing to disappear quietly. My name is Eliana. I am older. I am scarred. I am alive. And I didn't just survive cancer. I audited the world that tried to profit from it.
And I passed. Thank you.
Please like, share and subscribe for more. Also turn on your notification bell so you be the first to get our next shocking revenge story.